Okay, welcome to our notes about meiosis. So, this is most likely something new for all of you, but I thought we'd start with a little cartoon. You probably wouldn't have gotten this joke before you looked at your mitosis notes previously, but I'll read it out loud for you. Hey sis, get it? Sister chromatid. How's it going? You look different. Lost weight? Thanks, I've been on a diet. I really want to look good in my new jeans. Now, you may have heard of genes before. You may kind of think you know what they are. But if you look closely at this picture, there's a few more details about it that make it quite hilarious, and I'll come back to it in a few minutes. A quick summary of mitosis. If you remember, first phase of mitosis is prophase, and the chromosomes form in this phase. Then the nuclear envelope or membrane disappears. Sometimes you see centrosome instead of a centriole. It's just another name for a centriole. They move to opposite sides of the cell. The spindles form and attach to the centromeres and on the chromosomes, and they're getting ready to start to separate. Then metaphase is when the chromosomes all line up down the middle. The centrioles or centrosomes are at the opposite ends, and they're starting to get ready to separate again. Anaphase, remember A is for away or apart. The centrioles start to pull on each sister chromatid, and they separate the chromosomes. And then the chromosomes are separated to opposite ends. Then in telophase, the chromosomes uncoil and become chromatin again. The nuclear membrane reforms around them. Cytokinesis splits them in half, and now we have two identical daughter cells. Well, meiosis is a little different, and the results, but it's also a little bit similar. The results are very different from mitosis, so let's find out what that is. First, some definitions you'll need to know. That if you look closely at every chromosome, you would see that they are actually divided up into genes. And a gene is a section of DNA that's usually located on the chromosome, and it controls the development of traits. Those are the genes that you've heard of before. Those could be anything from your eye color, your height, your facial features, certain genetic disorders, or even your biological gender is all controlled by genes and chromosomes. So the striped sections here would each represent a different trait. Like gene 1 on the DNA could all be clumped here together, and gene 2 right next to it. And we can actually see those on microscopes, and I've identified which section of the chromosome controls different features for an organism. Pretty amazing. And we can manipulate those genes and make things look differently. So now I go back, and now you can actually see that whoever drew this threw that in there as a little bit of a joke for only those who understand. Now, another definition you'll need to know is homologous chromosomes. Whew, that's a big word, homologous, something you probably never used before, but I can tell you that the prefix homo means same, and you've heard that used in other scientific terms. But in this case, it's really meaning similar. And what a pair of homologous chromosomes are chromosomes that are very similar to each other in size and also in the genes that they control. So if you look at these two pairs here, they look very similar in length. These two similar, these two going on, and even these little short ones down here. But you can't really see if on this picture, and yeah, this is a picture, this is an actual photograph of chromosomes, that they are each, this is one X-shaped chromosome, but like the chromatids are kind of smushed together. You can kind of see it in a few of these, that there's the X, there it is. But all of these are just considered homologous. They're very similar to each other, and that's going to be very important when we talk about what happens in meiosis versus mitosis. Um, and you'll also notice that there are 23 pairs. This is the either or. Two X's mean it's a female by birth, and XY means male assigned at birth. Now, the way I kind of relate this to students who have a hard time understanding is that it's just like a pair of shoes. You know, the shoes match each other, but they're not exactly the same. They're similar. One is made for the right foot, one is made for the left foot. They may have different logos. They may have different laces. They're made to go together, but they're not exactly the same. Think of it like that. Now, there's some other words that you're going to need to know, and you've probably heard some of these words before, but I'm going to go through them one section at a time. A term I'm going to use later on is diploid. It's an adjective. A diploid cell is a cell that has all of its chromosomes. That's just like a normal everyday cell. Another name for it is sometimes body cells or somatic cells, and those are just all the cells that make up your body, everything. And they all reproduce with mitosis. Some examples are blood cells, brain cells, skin cells, muscle cells, bone cells, anything that has a full set of chromosomes is called a diploid cell. Now, on the other end, haploid are cells that only contain half of their chromosomes. And I always remembered it when I was in college because to me, haploid sounds a little bit like halfloid, and that just stuck in my head like, oh yeah, haploid means half the chromosomes. Now, they are sometimes called sex cells or gametes. And the reason they would use those was because instead of saying the other words like sperm cell is just for male, egg cell is just for female. So if you're just talking about haploid cells in general, sometimes it's easier to just say a gamete or a sex cell. And if you haven't figured it out yet, they're only used for reproduction. That's why they only have half their chromosomes, because they're going to contribute half the DNA and the other parent is going to contribute the other half. And so pollen from plants is a haploid. Egg cells in plants and animals and all sorts of organisms that reproduce sexually have haploid cells, gametes, or sex cells. Now here's a little chart on the next page that you're going to fill in, and you do not have to write every single word. I want you to try your best to summarize the differences between mitosis and meiosis. And mitosis on the left, we already know about. That there's 4 stages plus interphase. There's prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. They happen only in somatic cells, which now you know that means body cells. Their purpose is just to make more cells. So cellular proliferation, that's what that means. And they produce 2 diploid daughter cells. The 2 daughter cells that are produced have a full set of chromosomes. The chromosome number remains the same from beginning to end. And genetic variation, there's no change. Basically, all of these daughter cells are identical to the original parent cell. We knew that. Now, with meiosis, there are 8 stages, double the amount. It only happens in germ cells. Well, that's another term I forgot to mention. It's germ cells is another name for gametes or sex cells. The purpose of meiosis is just for sexual reproduction. They produce 4 haploid daughter cells. Whenever meiosis occurs, there's going to be 4 haploid daughter cells versus 2 diploid. And the chromosome number is cut in half for each new cell. Genetic variation is increased when you do this because of other things that happen that we'll talk more about later. So what do they have in common? Well, they both produce new cells. They're both very similar. They both have certain steps in common, and they both start with a single parent cell. Here's another chart that might help you figure out the differences between them. That on the left, mitosis starts as diploid and ends as diploid, but with meiosis, starts as diploid and in 4 haploids. Now, Amoeba Sisters made this cool GIF for us also, that on the left we have, looks like it started already. I'll wait for it to start over. All right. They say, Attack of the Clones, that when this happens, they are exactly the same. With meiosis, dare to be different. They start one way, they end with 4 different ways. The chromosomes over here, 46 to 46, starts with 46, ends with 23. Now we're going to stop here and come back to this for part 2 of meiosis. I didn't want this note to be too long, so you can have some time to process and understand what you learned before you move on to the second half. So I'll see you for meiosis part 2.